The crew of the Shenzhou 20 spaceflight finally returned to Earth today, more than a week later than their scheduled landing due to a suspected debris cracking a window.
A spacecraft that was supposed to bring 3 Chinese astronauts home from the Tiangong space station is now too risky to use. Their return capsule, Shenzhou 20, has tiny cracks in one of its windows, most likely from a high-speed collision with space debris. Instead of riding their own ship back through the atmosphere, the Shenzhou 20 crew ended up hitching a ride home on Shenzhou 21, the brand new capsule that had just delivered their replacements to orbit. So how did Tiangong, China's modular space station in low Earth orbit, end up in a situation where one crew used another crew's lifeboat? And what does that mean for the astronauts still living on board? On any space station, one rule is non-negotiable. Every astronaut must always have a safe seat home. For Tiangong, that lifeboat is the docked Shenzhou spacecraft, kept ready for an emergency return to Earth at any time. When debris damage made Shenzhou 20 unsafe, mission controllers faced a bad choice. Trust a compromised capsule during fiery re-entry, or improvise a new way to get the crew back to Earth. They chose safety first, and that decision turned Shenzhou 21, originally meant for a different crew, into an emergency lifeboat for Tiangong. The big twist is simple but unsettling. If Shenzhou 21 has already been used to bring the Shenzhou 20 astronauts home, what protects the Shenzhou 21 crew who remain aboard Tiangong now? Shenzhou 20 launched on April 24, 2025, on top of a Long March 2F rocket from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in China's Gobi Desert. It carried Commander Chen Dong, Operator Chen Zhongrui, and Science Operator Wang Ji to the Tiangong space station for a planned long-duration mission in low Earth orbit. The plan was straightforward: spend about 6 months running experiments, maintaining the station, and conducting spacewalks, then return to Earth once the Shenzhou 21 crew arrived to take over. That next crew, 3 new taikonauts on Shenzhou 21, launched later in the year for their own extended stay on Tiangong. For a short overlap, Tiangong was busy. 2 Shenzhou spacecraft were docked at the station, and 6 people were living in orbit together, a normal part of China's crew rotation strategy. Everything looked routine. The Tiangong space station was stable, its orbit carefully managed, and its lifeboats in place. Then, just before Shenzhou 20's scheduled return, flight controllers noticed something that changed the mission. During standard pre-landing inspections, engineers identified fine cracks in one of Shenzhou 20's windows, the kind of damage you expect from a high-speed impact with orbital debris. Even a small chip or crack in a window is a serious warning sign when that capsule must survive re-entry heating, pressure changes, and brutal deceleration on the way down. Engineers judged that Shenzhou 20 could no longer be trusted to carry people safely back to Earth, and the crew's planned return date was cancelled. In that moment, the 3 Shenzhou 20 taikonauts became, in effect, stranded in orbit. They were still attached to a working space station, but their own return vehicle had just been downgraded from lifeboat to liability. At the same time, Tiangong still had another Shenzhou capsule docked. Shenzhou 21 was fresh, healthy, and fully capable of re-entry. The question became how to use that second spacecraft in a way that protected both the outgoing crew and the newly arrived one. The answer was unusual, but effective. Shenzhou 21, the capsule that had recently delivered the next long-duration crew to Tiangong, was reassigned as an emergency ride home for the Shenzhou 20 astronauts. Instead of waiting months as a standby lifeboat for its own crew, it was repurposed immediately to rescue the previous expedition. On November 14, 2025, Shenzhou 21 undocked from the Tiangong space station and headed for Earth with the Shenzhou 20 crew strapped in. They rode the heat of re-entry, deployed parachutes, and landed safely on the open grasslands of Inner Mongolia, ending their mission later than planned but safe and healthy. From a human standpoint, this is a success story. Space debris damage was detected, risk was assessed conservatively, and the astronauts came home alive. From an operational standpoint, it created a new problem. The Shenzhou 21 crew on Tiangong now had no lifeboat of their own docked to the station. Chinese spaceflight policy includes a safety rule for exactly this kind of scenario. During any crewed mission, a Long March 2F rocket and a fresh Shenzhou spacecraft are kept in a near-ready state on the ground. If needed, they can be launched quickly to Tiangong to serve as an emergency lifeboat, providing a backup return capability for the crew in orbit. After Shenzhou 21 carried the previous crew home, Chinese officials announced that Shenzhou 22 would be launched to Tiangong to restore a safe return vehicle for the taikonauts still on board. Until that spacecraft arrives and docks, the Shenzhou 21 crew is in an uncomfortable but carefully managed situation, living and working on a station that currently has no attached escape capsule. The risk is controlled but real. Tiangong's orbit is stable, its life support systems are designed with redundancy, and ground teams monitor the station constantly. Still, every extra day in orbit without a lifeboat serves as a reminder that spaceflight, even in routine low Earth orbit, remains unforgiving. To understand why Shenzhou 20's cracked window is such a big deal, you have to understand space debris. Space debris, sometimes called space junk, includes dead satellites, empty rocket stages, metal fragments from past explosions, and tiny shards from collisions and breakups. Even a fragment only a few millimeters across can hit a spacecraft at several kilometers per second, delivering the energy of a bullet or more. There are tens of thousands of trackable objects larger than 10 centimeters in Earth orbit, and well over 1 million pieces larger than 1 centimeter, many of them circling through the same low Earth orbit region where Tiangong operates. Spacecraft are built with debris shielding, often using layered metal to absorb impacts. Windows are a trade-off. Astronauts need them for visibility, docking, and situational awareness, but windows must be thin and transparent, which makes them more vulnerable than armored hull sections. That makes windows one of the more delicate areas on a crewed vehicle. When engineers saw cracks in a Shenzhou window, they treated the incident as a serious structural risk rather than a cosmetic flaw. You might wonder why we still have unplanned debris hits if we track so many objects in space. Ground radar and optical networks do monitor orbits and run what are called conjunction assessments to calculate when a satellite or station might pass dangerously close to a tracked object. If the collision probability is high enough, operators can perform a debris avoidance maneuver, firing thrusters to move the station or capsule slightly and let the debris pass by safely. The problem is that many of the most dangerous fragments are too small to track individually with current sensors, yet still large enough to damage or destroy hardware. Simulations suggest there are hundreds of thousands to more than 1 million untracked fragments between 1 and 10 centimeters across in low Earth orbit. Shielding can stop many of them, but not all, especially on vulnerable surfaces like windows, radiators, and antennas. Even with the best tracking data, careful mission planning, and regular Tiangong orbit adjustments, some residual risk remains. Shenzhou 20's cracked window is a visible sign of that statistical risk turning into a specific, concrete event. From public information, several facts are relatively clear. Shenzhou 20's window showed cracks consistent with a debris strike. Its planned return was delayed, and its crew came home aboard Shenzhou 21 rather than their original capsule. The damaged Shenzhou 20 vehicle now occupies a Tiangong docking port, and engineers must decide whether to attempt a limited repair for an uncrewed return or to safely deorbit it over a remote region of the Pacific Ocean. Details like the exact time of the impact, the size of the fragment, and the precise effect on internal structures have not been fully disclosed. Those data points matter for engineering models, future shield designs, and operational rules, but the safety lesson is straightforward. If there is any serious doubt about a Crew-S ride home, you do not use it for people. This Tiangong incident is more than a one-off emergency for China's human spaceflight program. It is a case study inside a broader global trend, as low Earth orbit fills with commercial satellites, mega constellations, and debris from decades of launches and collisions. Experts have been warning that without stronger debris mitigation and active cleanup missions, some orbital regions could eventually become marginal for safe operations. A damaged Shenzhou capsule, rescued crew, and temporarily stranded station are all treated as data points in that growing risk curve. For Tiangong, this likely means more robust debris shielding in future modules, refined inspection routines for docked spacecraft, and possible changes to lifeboat policy, such as tighter overlap windows or faster backup launch timelines. For the international spaceflight community, it is another reminder that there are no national borders in orbit. a fragment that hits a Chinese spacecraft today, could originate from a rocket or satellite launched by any nation years ago. In the coming months, key developments will shape how this story fits into the wider space debris narrative. The launch and docking of Shenzhou 22 will restore a dedicated lifeboat for the current Tiangong crew and formally close this specific emergency. The fate of Shenzhou 20 will reveal how serious the structural concerns are, depending on whether engineers risk an uncrewed return or opt for a direct controlled deorbit. Future policy updates, new debris tracking partnerships, and any mention of this incident in international guidelines will show how quickly space agencies are learning from the event. Tiangong-S crews will keep working, doing science, maintaining systems, and looking down at Earth from low orbit. But after Shenzhou 20's cracked window and Shenzhou 21's unexpected role as a lifeboat, every future mission to the Chinese space station will fly with a sharper awareness of just how crowded and fragile low Earth orbit has become.